Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Katie. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my own personal experience of losing my sister and how that has affected me and how I've been able to deal with grief. This video I am actually filming because at the time that my sister died about 8 months ago from terminal cancer and a brain tumor. And it was very strong, a very difficult situation in which I had to actually be very present as her body deteriorated through this process. And I got a lot of time to prepare myself for her death, which obviously isn't easy anyway. But at that time, I remember looking for a lot of videos on getting how to get ready for someone's death, like how to get ready for someone's transition, how to be there for them and at the same time not lose my mind, how to go through grief, what to expect, I was looking for so many videos and I found a lot of different people that were sharing their experience, and honestly they made such a difference for me that I want to kind of give that back and share a little bit more about my experience and how it's tough, but at the same time you can find kind of like the silver lining within it, I guess. My family is very spiritual and not in a religious way, more of in a new age kind of healing, universe way, if that makes any sense. And I think that in some shape or form, the beliefs that we hold really helped us kind of like be present within her transition. So my sister was diagnosed with a brain tumor that was, when they found it, was massive, and it was in 2015 if I'm not mistaken, and she passed away in 2018, so that was 3 years after that. At the initial diagnosis, it kind of took us by surprise. At that time she was feeling horrible and she was always going through so many different illnesses and problems in her body, but she could never find out what was the cause of it. We went to several physicians of all sorts and nobody could pinpoint what the problem was. And when we went into the ER because she kind of had a seizure, that's when they found this brain tumor in her brain, which was huge, ridiculously big, and doctors couldn't even understand how she survived as that growth as it grew so big. It was really tough, and they got her into a emergency operation right away, like a 14-hour operation. We honestly felt like we were getting struck by a truck. We had no idea this was the case. It happened so fast. Our relationship wasn't in the best place when that happened too, and I feel like that is also a lesson that I would love to give people if I can have a say, and if people could, if anyone wants my advice, try for your family relationships to be as harmonious and as healed and as transformed as possible right away, because the feeling of oh my gosh, I'm probably gonna cry in this video. The feeling of knowing that she might die at that moment and having such petty fights that we used to have and having all of this relationship baggage unattended, I think was one of the most painful things I've ever experienced, even more so than her actual death. So if you have problems with your brothers, with your sisters, if you have problems with your family, say what you need to say, be at peace, find compassion within yourself, and try to access that space of non-judgment, because that's gonna bite you in the ass if something happens, I swear to God. And well, after the operation, it was kind of like a miraculous thing. Nobody thought she was actually gonna wake up, so I kind of went through her loss right then and there. And she was miraculously, healed for 2 years, 3 years. She was perfect. She came back being another person. She was super kind and sweet and patient and loving and balanced and healthy, and it was just mind-blowing to us, to be honest. And I personally didn't think she was going to get diagnosed again. I thought that was it. I thought that was the whole thing. And it was very painful to me to realize that 3 years down the line she began to exhibit the symptoms again. And it started with a very rapid weight loss, ridiculously rapid weight loss, and it obviously catched our attention, and we made all of our efforts to go into the hospital and have her checked in every way possible to find what was the case. Her second diagnosis was in this part of the brain, the brainstem, I guess you can call it in English. And apparently that part of the brain, from what I understand, is the part that controls all the involuntary functions of the body. So walking, eating, digesting, you know, like speaking, all those things. So she was diagnosed, and very, very rapidly she began to deteriorate, and it was so painful. I never in a million years thought she was going to actually die. I thought it was normal that this kind of like illnesses and things like that come with those symptoms, and that's why I chose to oh, sorry you guys, I got interrupted. So yeah, I was saying that I never actually thought that it would, you know, go down that way. And at the same time, my family sustains a lot of like life after death beliefs, I guess. Like, we don't see it as something horrible and negative, even though it's incredibly painful, because it is, and it's unsettling, and it creates so many things within a person, you know, to lose someone so close. At the same time, we don't think it's something negative. We think that it's actually, you know, like the soul contract of this person. You know, like they had a moment in which they had to leave. They completed everything they needed to complete in this incarnation, and they're just moving on to somewhere else, somewhere better, somewhere different. So even though we don't fully get it, as nobody here on Earth is completely, you know, like sure 100% of how this works, we had a lot of faith that it wasn't a bad thing. And the fact that she deteriorated so intensely was kind of like a confirmation that it was better for her to rest, and it was better for her to move on. And in that sense, it wasn't actually that hard. I'm going to share with you my experience of the difficulties that I've had in that sense, so you can maybe be ready if you're going through something similar, if you have someone in your family that's terminally ill, or going through a very difficult diagnosis in which you think there's a possibility of them passing away. So first, you have to know that we as humans have an an instinct and a like protection mechanism that is so strong that we, as a collective, as a society, as individual people, we create a platform of thinking that makes us believe that we are so valuable, and that makes us believe that our existence is so important, as a way to deflect the attention from the fact that we are super fragile and we're all gonna die, and our mortality is a reality that we cannot escape. So as a society and as individuals, this happens on a subconscious level, and we create this whole thing to feel valuable and to feel like we matter, and that our, you know, like everything is so important. When somebody close to you dies, your belief system is shaken in such a way that is intense. And that's, I think, where most of the symptoms of grief come from. Because honestly, at the beginning, before it all happened, I thought, oh my god, I'm gonna miss her so much, and I'm never gonna be able to move on, and this is ridiculous, and she just became my best friend this like 3 years. We got all of our relationship together, and now she's leaving. And it was so, I thought that was gonna be like the hardest hit, and obviously it was. Like, I get teary-eyed just thinking about it, and I miss her every day of my life, and that's never gonna change. And I think that we never really move on from that. But I don't think that's the hardest part of it, to be honest with you. It wasn't for me, at least. What happened to me, and what was the hardest for me, was that this whole, I had like an existential crisis, and I was just like, okay, I have all of these beliefs. What if none of them are true? Like, what if everything that I believe is just a construct of my mind, which to a certain extent I know it is, but like, what if we are literally just gonna die and that's it, and there's nothing else? You know, like, this whole thing happened to me, this crisis, like, what on earth are we doing here? What's the purpose of being here? You know, like, this whole thing got triggered. And I think that's because when we come face to face to our mortality, we recognize how we have created this whole system of beliefs based on avoiding that truth. And it was very intense to come face to face with the fact that I might not be here tomorrow, and that all the people that I love are going to die at some point, and that we don't fully know what happens after death. No matter how strong your beliefs are, I have studied like so many different like certifications and metaphysical sciences and like past life things and reincarnation and past life regression and so many things. And at the same time, no matter how much you study or know and learn, at the end of the day, you won't know until you're there, and you won't know for sure what happens until you experience it yourself, which we have probably several times, but we can't remember. And this generated in my physical body symptoms that I would have never expected, honestly. Like, I didn't know grief was a physical thing. I thought it was a psychological thing, an emotional thing. But it was a physical thing for me, a very, very physical thing for me, in which, you know, like, the coping mechanisms began to appear. I was like emotionally eating, escapism as much as possible. I started drinking more, which I've never really been someone who drinks. And I was trying to find relief in any way possible. You become more dependent on the people around you. You become like more needy, I guess. I was living alone at the time in an apartment far away from my family, and I had to move on through the grief the majority of the time by myself. And I would feel so lonely, and I would like put this crazy expectations on my boyfriend, you know, because I needed to feel loved and I needed to feel safe, and I needed it to come from someone else, because at the time I couldn't give that to myself. Besides that, like, the anxiety is very strong. I started to experience a lot of anxiety. My nervous system got kind of stuck. I think that they call that complicated grief, which is that basically your nervous system doesn't realize that it's not in danger anymore, and it stays in a fight or flight or freeze response, and that creates this reactions in the body in which you feel very tired and you can't focus, and all of your energy is being spent in being in this like alert state because you think that the threat is not gone yet. That obviously doesn't happen to everybody, but in my case, my sister was very, very, very ill, to the point that we would think that every day would probably be the day that she would be gone. And this was so intense because it lasted for like 2 months, in which I would have like dreams, and my spirit guides will tell me like it's gonna happen very soon, like prepare yourself, tell her what you feel, you know, forgive her for anything that you need. And every day, and I was not living at the time at the same place that she was in, so every call that my mom made to me, I thought she was gonna say that she passed away. Every time the phone rang, I thought that was the news. Every time that I would go there, you know, like, I would experience so much resistance to seeing her that way, obviously. Every day I thought she was gonna die, and it would never happen. And it was just this emotional, exhausting process. And that's what probably made me go into this, like, nervous freak out of my system, you know. And depression is also pretty common. It happened to me. I mean, I've always been someone who has struggled with depression. Like, no matter what I'm going through in my life, like, it always picks its head, like, somewhere. And I've learned to live with it, and I don't have any judgment towards it. It's fine. But when this whole thing happened, it kind of hit me like 6 months afterwards, to be honest with you. Like, at the beginning, I was just in alert mode. You know, it's just like, what needs to happen right now? What do I need to take care of right now? How can I be safe right now? And that was kind of like the only focus that I could have. Like, I couldn't see further. And about 6 months after her death, I started feeling all the symptoms. I think the adrenaline kind of like went down, and I started to actually feel the loss, and it was very difficult. And I hope this is not like a super negative video. It is not my intention for it to be. My intention is for you to know what to expect in case you're preparing for this. On a more positive note, something that I feel that is very important is to do some research. If you're in a situation that is similar to what I'm telling you, do some research on the symptoms that people experience the day of their death. Because you can go on for months thinking that they're going to die at any moment, but there's very specific symptoms that happen 6 hours before their death, 3 hours before their death, and that was very useful for me. Very useful. Like, if I didn't have that information, oh my gosh, it would have been so much, you know, more difficult. It was difficult as it is, but still. If you can, whether they're conscious, whether they're unconscious, if you can, try to be present for them. It's so hard to think about them when we're so busy thinking about us. It's so difficult to think, like, how can I make this easier for her or for them? How can I make this easier? How can I help them with this transition? How can, you know, like, be there for them? It's so difficult. It's so difficult because you're thinking about yourself and you're thinking about how much resistance you're feeling and how painful it is to see them this way. And you're thinking about so many ways in which you're trying to make this bearable for you. But at the same time, we forget that the one that's actually going through this transition is them. And this was very powerful for me because my mom was such an example of love in this family, and I can't admire her enough for this. Because every single day, she was devoted to making my sister comfortable. She became a nurse. She became a hero, and she would wake up like at 4 a.m, give her all her medicines, and go like at 12 midnight to, you know, sleep when she made sure that she was asleep. And, you know, like, she completely devoted herself into the situation. And I think that if that is easier than to trying to resist it, for me it was different. For me it was very, very difficult since I wasn't in that space. Every time I would go, I had to like prepare myself and, you know, like really, really find the strength within me to go and be with her. And we had a lot of different moments, which were very powerful. And at one point she was at the hospital and I was speaking to her. She couldn't speak at that time. Not really. Kind of, but not really. We didn't know if her brain was making her too confused to understand what we were saying. We didn't know if she understood what we were saying. We didn't know if she could speak or not, or what was going on. Every day was different. Her symptoms were different every single day. And I told her, like, we're so blessed to be in a family in which we're not trying to hold you here, and we're not trying to hold you and make you be healthy, and we are allowing you to pass away in peace. And I want you to know that if you ever feel, because at the time we didn't know if she knew that she was dying. We knew she was dying, but we didn't know if she was aware of that. So I was like, if you ever feel like leaving the sick body and moving on to something better, know that my mom and me, we're gonna be fine. And I want you to know that we love you and we forgive you for everything. There's, you know, no resentment in our hearts. And I told her, like, we're so very blessed to be able to have the consciousness within the family to make this a beautiful thing, even painful, but like beautiful in a way. And she spoke to me, and I didn't think she could speak anymore. And she said, and I'm so blessed to be able to share that moment with you, the moment of her passing. And that was so beautiful and so powerful. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, do whatever you need to do to be okay, and be present for them. You know, like, be present for them. Because believe me, the craziest shit is gonna manifest within you when this happens. Like, you might be a super kind, loving person who loves the patient, and you're like, they're your best friend, but the way that this is so painful, it will trigger so many mechanisms of defense within you that you will not understand why you're acting how you're acting. Many times I wanted to go see her and share with her, but it was so painful to see her that way that I just couldn't, you know? So I guess my recommendation is that, you know, if you can speak to them if they're conscious, make sure to forgive them for anything. Tell them that you forgive them for everything and anything they might have think they did wrong. Thank them. Thank them for the experience of their death. Because they feel so guilty. They feel so guilty because they know what this is gonna, you know, trigger within the family. Usually the patients feel very, very guilty for dying, to such an extent that they actually try not to die. They hold on for years, if they can, to a sick body and suffering, just because they're so afraid of the reaction that the family's gonna have. So liberate them. Let them be free. Know that, you know, they're always gonna be in your heart. And it's never going to change. You're always going to love them more and more every day. And they deserve to rest if they're in a bad physical shape in which, you know, they can't do anything about it. And it's also something that comes up with the families too, is that this stuff is very expensive. Illness is very expensive, and it's very common for families to fight. It's very common for families to not know what to do. In our family, it was difficult because we took care of her, and then we realized that we couldn't take care of her the way she needed to be taken care of, so we needed like a nurse, and then we realized we needed more than a nurse, and then we realized that we needed equipment, and that we needed so many different things, and the fact that you don't know how long this is going to take, it's very nerve-wracking. So if you're going through an experience like this, try as much as possible to be very compassionate with all the members of the family, because all of us, all of the whole family unit is going to be very affected, and the way that you're going to react to things is going to be strange. It's going to be unpredictable. Oh my god, I got interrupted again. Well, I guess it is a really long video, so yeah. Where was I? So yeah, I was letting you know about the family, the financial part, and how everyone's going to be reacting pretty unexpectedly. So try to be as patient as you can, and I really recommend working out and taking magnesium for anxiety, because that really helps too. I guess this is my experience, and I hope this is helpful for you. And if you're going through something similar to what I went through, all of my love and all of my compassion is with you, and know that you're gonna be okay no matter what, and know that this person's path includes this part. You know, this is part of their movie, this is part of their journey, and it doesn't have to be a horrible thing. You know, like, it can be a celebration that they completed what they needed to complete here on Earth, and that they don't need to be here anymore. The Earth is a very dense space in which we experience a lot of different things, including suffering, and in spiritual realms, it is supposed that we don't feel any of that. So maybe they're well on your journey to, you know, happiness and heaven and a beautiful space in which they can rest and be happy. I hope this was helpful. Thank you all so much for the videos that you have shared about this subject. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll be sharing more about this experience and more about a lot of different new age things. I do meditations, I do card readings, healing therapies of all sorts. So if you like this kind of stuff, check the other videos, and I don't know, thank you for your support. I would love to have you here, and know that it will get better. It will get better, and everything will eventually return to normal, and somehow it will be different, but it will somehow be good.